Hi everyone. It's great to see you again. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Today, we have a brand new story to share with you. So, let's get started. I just stood there and stared at her, waiting for her to understand how important what she said was. She had her arms crossed and her chin slightly tilted up, as if she thought I would give in to her threat and either follow her or forget about being close to her. But it wasn't the words that moved me. It was that she really thought this would work and that I would break, beg, or at least try hard to show her that I was worthy of her love. That's when everything made sense. This was not a fight that happened in the heat of the moment. There wasn't an argument that got out of hand. I had been a part of this routine for far too long. It was a cycle of control that looked like normal marital conflict. I laughed a real, pleased laugh, the kind you let out when something is so bizarre that it doesn't even seem real. She was shocked and her eyes widened for a second, but she quickly covered it up with a frown. What's so funny? She lost it. After letting out one last laugh, I leaned back and looked at her. Wonderful. Always keep it. Keep quiet. She blinked, as if she was waiting for me to say I was sorry and that I wasn't angry. I wasn't mad, though. I wasn't hurt at all. I was done. I got up, picked up my phone from the table, and left the room. There was no yelling or dramatic leaving. Just a direct, quiet end. After all these years, I didn't feel the need to explain myself for the first time. I wasn't going to try to make her understand or show her she was wrong. Let her think about it. She needs to understand that her plans won't work this time. I went into the bedroom, got a pillow and a blanket, and then went straight to the guest room without saying a word. No slamming doors or making passive-aggressive comments. Nothing but space. She didn't follow me. Not right away. She must have thought I just needed some time to calm down and that I'd be back in an hour or two to say sorry and try to make things better. She may have thought that I would try to make a deal with her, offer some kind of swap, in order to get back the closeness she was holding back. But I didn't want anything she had. I laid down on the guest bed and stared up at the ceiling to let the thought sink in. It wasn't scary for me to lose her. I felt better. I felt better than I had in years when I woke up early the next morning. My stomach didn't sink or tense up, and I didn't feel like I had to fix what she had broken. She was already in the kitchen when I got there. She was sitting at the table with her arms crossed. Her face showed that she was looking forward to what I was going to talk about from the night before. I made myself a coffee and sat down next to her without being at all upset. She shook her head. Are you done acting like a child? As I sipped my coffee, I let her words float away. I smiled after that. Yeah, I really am. Her eyes got a little narrow as if she didn't understand. She was ready for the fight, the plea, or the deal. It didn't come. I had my coffee, stood up, and walked away instead. That was the first time she felt less sure of herself and knew something was wrong. This was the start of the end, but she didn't know it yet. The silence made her feel lost. There were years when every fight went like this. She would push. I'd say no. She would get worse. And in the end, I'd give in either by saying sorry to end the argument or by giving her exactly what she wanted to avoid another long fight. I didn't give her anything this time, though. Not a response. Do not get angry. There was no last-ditch effort to fix things. I just stopped interacting. There was no change in how I spent my day. I didn't say where I was going when I left the house. I didn't look for her when I went back. I only spoke when I had to, and even then, my words were brief, neutral, and free of feeling. She didn't like it. It seemed like she didn't care at first. When I walked by her without saying anything, she'd roll her eyes. She would laugh when I didn't respond to her passive-aggressive comments. But after a few days, the show began to fall apart. She tried to test me, and that was the first real sign that she was scared. She walked in and sat down on the couch across from me while I was on my phone in the living room. She didn't say anything right away. She sat there and waited for me to notice her. She let out a big sigh when I didn't. Is this going to be how things are now? I didn't even look up. What do you want to say? I asked with a low voice. This thing with ignoring me. Do you think this is okay? I finally took a quick look at her. You are not being ignored. Really? Since it feels like it. I gave a shrug. I'm tired of wasting time on pointless talks. She clenched her teeth. Okay, I get it. That's why you're having a temper tantrum now, right? I laughed out loud at that one. A temper tantrum. I felt more at ease than ever. She wasn't used to this. I tried to fix things for her all the time, and I took blame for the problems she made. She was used to being in charge. She didn't have anything now, though. Later that night, the real change took place. She was waiting for me to say something by the sink after dinner. I could feel how desperate she was getting. At this point, I would usually break down. I would then try to fix things and act like everything was fine again. I didn't say anything, I just grabbed my water, took a sip, and left the kitchen. And that was the moment when she finally got it. No longer was she in charge. We got used to the silence between us. It wasn't just a break in the talk. It changed everything about how I lived my life. I had nothing else to say to her. There's nothing left to fight for. But I had someone else to think about for the first time in years. Me. I didn't say anything big about it. I didn't tell her, I'm going to change my life now. No, I just changed the way I lived. Without asking her first, without getting her approval, and without any doubt. The first thing I did was plan when I would sleep. I had been having too many restless nights, replaying fights in my head while I slept and trying to guess when the next one would happen. But this time, I went to bed early and was alone. When I woke up, I felt refreshed. After that, I started going to the gym. I signed up at a nearby gym that wasn't fancy. It was just a simple place where I could work out, lift weights, and heal from the inside out. The first week was terrible. It hurt like it hadn't hurt in years. But I was glad for it. Each sore muscle helped me remember that I was getting better. That I was taking back control in a way that she couldn't change. She did, of course, notice. Being soaked in sweat and still having trouble breathing, I could tell she was watching me when I got home from the gym. She acted like she didn't care at first, but she was always there, watching me every time I grabbed my gym bag or drank chocolate milk. I also started to dress better. Not for her, not for anyone else, just for me. I got rid of some old clothes that I hadn't worn in a while and replaced them with clothes that made me feel good. I finally got a real haircut instead of the short cuts I used to settle for. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I started to remember who I was. After that, I went outside. At first, it was small things like getting coffee by myself, going for walks, and getting back in touch with people I hadn't seen in a while. But in the end, I got back to life. When people asked me to go to bars, I said yes, and I met new people. I felt a little more free every time I walked out that door. She took up less room in my mind as I thought about myself. That's when she started to really freak out. She knew she was losing control of me. She tried to act like nothing had changed at first. She pretended not to care and rolled her eyes whenever I left the house. She made fun of my gym routine and laughed when I walked by her in a brand new outfit. But I could see it in the way her confidence fell a little more each time she saw that I wasn't responding. Then there was a shift. It began small. Somehow, she touched me by mistake one night as I walked by her to get something from the kitchen. She hadn't done that in weeks. After a few nights, she stood at the entry of my new bedroom and leaned against the frame as if she wanted to say something. She didn't, though. She did nothing but wait for me to invite her in. I didn't. Then she got worse. She spoke up one morning as I was getting ready to go to the gym. Her voice was almost soft. A lot of time has been spent away from home. After tying my shoes, I looked at her while I grabbed my bag. Yes, she thought about it. What are they doing? I smiled, living. That hurt her. Through the small gap between her lips, I could tell she wanted to respond but couldn't. Things were not meant to be this way. The person in charge was meant to be her. She should have been the one making me want her attention so badly, not the other way around. Now, though, she was the one who watched me leave, curious about where I was going, what I was doing, and most of all, who I was with. How much power she used to have over me. Gone. Gone. The only way she knew how, she tried to pull me back. In the kitchen one night, she leaned against the counter next to me and tapped her fingers aimlessly on the surface. Too laid back. Too forced. She began, and her voice was dangerously close to one of despair. This doesn't need to go on. We don't have to be this way. I didn't answer. I didn't say anything during the quiet. She moved closer. I miss you. That's different. I turned my head a little and looked her in the eyes. I said, miss me, over and over, as if the idea itself were strange. She gave me a nod and ran her fingers down my arm. It was the same woman who used closeness as a bargaining chip with me before she tried to give it away for free. It felt good to be touched for a second. Then I slowly pulled my arm away, got my water, and left the room. At that point, she knew she had lost. She wasn't ready to give up. Something changed inside her after I pulled away from her touch that night. The act of casual apathy she had shown at the start was no longer there. Now she was all set to stop the harm. She tried again, but this time it was harder. It was quiet at first. She would stay close to me longer and act like she was just by chance in the same room. She would sit on the couch next to me by accident. We both knew she had never cared about my day before, but she would ask me pointless questions to make it look like she did. She got worse when I didn't bite back. She leaned against the entry of my room, which was no longer ours, one night as I was getting ready to go out and watched me put on my watch. Are you going out again? I didn't seem to notice her. Yes. Who is it with? As I rolled up my sleeves, I smiled to myself. Does it matter? I saw that hit her. She took a deep breath and squeezed her fingers together around the doorframe. It seems odd to me. You didn't go out this much before. When I turned to face her, she couldn't read my face. I didn't do a lot of things in the past. She looked at me for a long time, hoping that I would say something else that would reassure her that I wasn't really running away. I didn't, though. I took my keys, walked past her, and left without saying anything else. The power she used to have over me was gone. Somewhere deep down, she must have known that she had lost me. But she didn't want to accept it, so she tried one last frantic thing, guilt. Not long after that, when I came home, she was waiting for me at the table, looking down at her hands. I was about to walk right by her when she spoke. May I talk? I sighed. I sat down with my hands on the table in front of me even though I knew what it was. She thought for a moment, go ahead, and then she let out a short, shaky breath. I have no idea what's going on between us. I made a face. Really? She didn't hear my tone. I just don't want to fight any longer. I turned my head a little. It's not a fight. Real life is just catching up with you. She looked like she was scared as her eyes flickered. Things don't need to be this way. Things can be fixed. She flinched and said, I know I haven't been perfect. Not because I was rude, I wasn't, it was because I wasn't following the plan she had made up in her head. As I slowly let out my breath, I leaned back in my chair. Do you want the truth? She gave me a nod and looked at me as if she was holding on to the last chance to make things better. This is no longer what I want. Keep quiet. She opened her mouth a little as if she were going to say something, but nothing came out. I leaned forward, and my voice was calm. I'm not mad at you. I'm not even mad.